in a pretty good start. This means that this is the winner's match, and the winner gets to move on to the playoffs. The loser ends up playing against MaxPax for a playoff spot, so let's see who gets it done. In the bottom right, our blue Zerg player, it is Solar from Onside Gaming.
And the top left side from Germany for Team Big is the German D-Mauer ShoWTimE. That was a fun first series, actually, MaxPax versus Solar. I always like watching them play because I feel like they always get like explosive series, and it's usually very, very close. So I'm happy to see Solar win from time to time and MaxPax win from time to time. Most of the time the games are quite cool. But ShoWTimE, I feel like versus Solar is a little bit different. I feel like he's much more defensive than MaxPax, even though ShoWTimE has a lot of openings where he's like in the face of a Zerg with like Oracle harassment, Adept harassment. But I feel like it's still a little bit different than what MaxPax does, because what ShoWTimE likes to do is to camp behind the middle lines with cannons, batteries like Disruptors and Archons, while MaxPax likes to be on the other side of the map with units with like Blink Stalkers, Chargeless, constantly trading, constantly harassing, while expanding at the same time. So I would like to say that ShoWTimE is more like tech heavy, while MaxPax is more like map control, tempo heavy in Protoss versus Zerg. And I think Solar does a little bit better when he is left alone a little bit more, when he's not under the pressure of a Protoss. So I'm curious to see how this game is going to go.
It's interesting because obviously, you know, Solar's, you say Solar's best when he's left alone, but then I feel like with ShoWTimE being a little bit defensive, right? Is that not a little bit better against Solar in general as well? Because I always see Solar trying to make these big attacks happen, right? Like he's really big on his timings. He'll pull queens across the map if he feels like the chance is there. So is that not something we feel like maybe ShoWTimE's style is better against, or?
I think so. I mean, to be honest, I think I think Solar would not tend to go for like early game attacks versus ShoWTimE most of the time, because I think he knows he can be a little bit more greedy. I think still the Korean Zergs are more aggressive than any other Zergs. They tend to go for like even like proxy hatcheries. We could see Ragnarok do that versus MaxPax in the Africa TV Champions Cup. Dark is constantly doing like Niduses and everything like that. Solar is one part of the aggression team as well most of the time. While the European Zergs are more, macro heavy, get to the drone count and then start trading. So I would not be surprised if Solar goes for these kind of early attacks, but I think versus ShoWTimE he can kind of get away with being a little bit more greedy and then go into the aggression that he likes, which is the Road Ravager, Link Bane, and like constant trading.
Yeah, that makes sense. ShoWTimE is going to opt for that Stargate, so no surprises there. We just expect ShoWTimE to open like triple Oracle into Blink +1 every time, pretty much, or any differences we might see.
I think so. I mean, there are new builds, well, not necessarily new builds, but a lot of the time ShoWTimE likes to go +1 and charge instead of Blink, and then he goes for a Forge Robotics facility instead of a Forge Twilight Council, and then he goes into the Templar Archives a little bit fast. Disruptors, and then eventually go into the Templar Archives to start camping, like I said, with like Disruptors and Archons. So I think whenever there is going to be aggression coming out from ShoWTimE, it's when he's going to be starting Forge and Twilight Council at the same time. If he wants to be playing more defensively, I think it's going to be Forge and Robotics Facility. We'll see after the first couple of Oracles, because I think the couple of Oracles and like Adepts and securing a third base, this is what we're going to be seeing every game.
Alright, well, we do have a few Adepts just going to move around. The Oracle already checked in the third, but there's nothing there for it to grab or latch onto or anything, so just going to stick around, of course, and obviously Solar prepares with his couple of queens. He gets himself the Spore Crawlers ready. Just wants to make sure he's as safe as possible against these Oracles. He definitely had a couple of issues against the Oracles and MaxPax, just taking a lot of damage a few times over, so just needs to be careful there. Obviously, meanwhile, ShoWTimE gets that third running. And again, fairly peaceful opening with the double Oracle. Things might spice up a little bit in the next couple moments.
Yeah, the most important part, I think, is that we're playing on the North American server, and the first match is on West, so it's slightly worse for ShoWTimE. So, like, dealing damage with Oracles is slightly more difficult, because, like, controlling the Oracles on ping is just so tricky. And it's the same for the Zerg, when we play on Central, it's harder for them to pull drones on time, to get the queens stutter stepping and so on. So split versus Disruptors, like we could see Solar versus MaxPax, like Solar had a lot of trouble splitting versus the Disruptors. So yeah, the North American server and the pink will definitely take part into this match.
Well, then we do start on, I believe, West for this one, so West, Central, West, so Solar gets that little preference to start off with, as we see him just head straight into his melee upgrade as well. So wants to get into those lanes, into those deadly banelings, right? +2 melee is just so terrifying for a Protoss player, man. Like, one baneling slips in can do so much damage in a mineral line, so that's what Solar will set up for, gets his lag going behind it, and still these oracles just kind of posing, not really doing too much. Now activates, but those drones were so far away, I don't think there was any real option there.
Yeah, not really. But even though there was like little to no drone damage done from ShoWTimE, he's still up in probes versus the drones. So now the adepts kind of don't do any damage. Nice defense there by Solar. And yeah, the +2 banings, one-shotting probes is something that I've been advocating for a long time. I think it's crap for Protosses. Like, I really don't think it should be in the game, but it is in the game, and I'll always whine about it. It is what it is. Still nice defense by Solar, constantly defending the Adept, and ShoWTimE fire, and it's little to no damage. The fourth has not been cancelled. And yeah, again, ShoWTimE is doing basically what I was talking about. Forge Robotic Facility, late Twilight Council, and he's preparing for the defensive set of buildings and units to get fourth base somewhat later on with like Archons and the Disruptors for sure.
Just lose one Oracle, but he built 4, so he still has the 3, and he's got 2 threatening on the right-hand side still, so they're just kind of doing their thing. Solar just racks down an Infestation Pit, so Infestation Pit alongside the Bane Nest seems a bit fast for an Infestation Pit. What do we generally go for from here? Just rush up to Hive?
I think it's rush to Hive and go for like Hydra Lurker or Vipers for the Disruptors. Like, I wouldn't imagine this is going to be for Swarm Host. This is not a good map for Swarm Host. Most likely it's going to be just Hydralisk and Lurker then, especially since Solar sees exactly what ShoWTimE is doing. He's walling off his entire third base. Oh, nice catch by Solar in the middle of the map, catching all the sentries and as well as while ShoWTimE is trying to get to the third base. The +1 melee attack is also doing wonders here, and ShoWTimE's entire army goes cleaned up. And it's a big deal for ShoWTimE because his army is so small, and it's very important to keep the tempo alive to get the fourth base as soon as possible, because then you can start making shield batteries with the energy going up. And since the sentries got kind of reset, that means there's no more hallucinations to scout around for or do force fields to defend the potential link run-bys, the baning run-bys, or anything that Solar is going to throw at him. So that was a very good move by Solar.
Yeah, fantastic catch. Really reset ShoWTimE in a big way, and well, Solar, he's got that Bane speed coming in. There is that Hive on the way up as well. So just all these bits and pieces slotting together. Because ShoWTimE hasn't really done much, Solar can kind of just get away with doing as he wishes, right? Like, ShoWTime's only had these Oracles. There's been no threat of anything else. So just continue through as Solar and just get set for, well, maxing out and then obviously teching up a little bit as well. You mentioned the Hydra Lurker. The Hydra Den is on the way. Climbing up with the Hive so we can start to get that Lurker Den down. And the Lurker upgrades in play, we know just in general Solar is a massive fan of the Lurkers as well. It's something which I feel like he's one of the very best with as well. He loves his Lurker play, he's great at it, so.
Really, I never thought of Solar of like the Lurker player. If you think so, that's quite interesting. I always think of Solar, especially when I play versus him, that he is the Roach Ravager Bane kind of guy. When I see him playing Lurkers, it's most of the time, just like he cannot kill you anymore with Roach Ravager Bane. I never see him really rushing to Lurkers. So this is kind of like an interesting game for me.
Yeah, I guess so, but like, maybe it stems from his ZVT, because I feel like so often I see Solar just surviving ZVT, and then he gets to Lurkers and he just turns games around, And so I guess that kind of bias continues over a little bit into this matchup, where if he goes Lurkers, I'm like, yeah, I know Solar and Lurkers, they seem to do well, so yeah, kind of.
I see, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. In the meantime, Solar is trying to set up an attack from both sides at the third base and at the fourth base. Nice stasis wards also triggered by Solar, setting the links forward, making sure that his entire army is going to be caught up in the stasises. In the meantime, ShoWTimE is also doing a War Prism harassment to Solars in the main base, and Solar has to back off. Slightly different thing that ShoWTimE is doing. I was talking about Disruptors. He opted not to go for Disruptors and went for High Templars and Storm, so I was wrong about that. In the meantime, Solar is finishing his Lurker Den, should be starting his Lurker upgrades, but ShoWTimE is comfortable at 4 bases and already starting his first carriers before even first Lurkers are out on the map. I like the position for ShoWTimE as long as he can secure a 5th base and not take any economical damage in the next 2 minutes.
Well, I think Roach is going to try and break open a wall or two. We've got Banes from the left-hand side as well, but a big stasis wall to start us off there. We did have Archon Storm available there as well, but that's going to have to retreat over here to maybe help out. Now some Banelings do reach this base, so ShoWTimE just losing track of that. 25 probes going down, and that is obviously a big deal. A lot of economy damage is taken, and like you said, you liked it. The carriers were on the way, the timing looked good. But now you take a big chunk of eco damage, and now Solar's a little bit more free to just throw things at you, and you're going to struggle to replace all of that.
Yeah, since the carrier transition is very expensive, so when you start making carriers, you have invested into the additional stargates, the fleet beacon, the carriers themselves, and the upgrades for the carriers. So that's a lot of money invested into the units that are not going to be helping you directly into the fight, as Solar is still trying to find more damage with the Baneling. So it's a timing for the Zerg player when you are transitioning into the carriers to deal damage to you. So that's why I said I like the ShoWTimE's position if he doesn't take any economical damage. But now he even loses his third base to the Baneling run by, and now what ShoWTimE is left is basically a couple of Immortals, Mass Zealots, lots of High Templars, and 2 carriers.
Not really an ideal army. You're definitely kind of halfway to kind of the dream army, basically. So not there yet, and obviously with the lower economy, the missing base, it is more and more likely you just kind of commit across the map and do have the attempt to retake the base as ShoWTimE players chase him on the Zerglings. So Feeling's getting chased around, but of course Solar behind this is getting those lurkers up. He's getting a good chunk of Hydras on the way, so his army has been ever improving during this. And like we say, just ShoWTimE will struggle a little bit to continue with the carrier transition while replacing everything he's losing out on. And that's the problem he's at. His production tab is just kind of sad, man. Like a new Nexus, 1 carrier, a single upgrade that started earlier. Versus the Zerg that's just getting a bit of everything at that spiring, get the answer carriers on the way as well. Just really feels like Solar takes such a commanding lead in this game now.
Yeah, also the carrier count is not growing rapidly. ShoWTimE is just starting the 4th carrier right now. The 3rd one was started a long time ago. That's all because of the economy of ShoWTimE got shattered so many times. And the carriers really need to be like produced continuously to make a huge difference. I'm surprised Solar is not like sieging the 4th base with the lurkers. He definitely could have done that a little bit more often. I guess he doesn't have the exact high ground vision. He's bringing the Overlords and the Overseers right now, and maybe he will try to do another attack right now. Maybe he was also waiting for +3 melee attack, something like that. But I feel like he could have done a little bit more harassment with the lurkers.
Lurker's going to burrow up. Gateways will take some damage. We do have a big army bottom left from Solar as well set up, so he's really kind of poised to go for multiple positions. And again, these lurkers just sit from afar, getting some damage done. Pretty safe at the moment, not much that can be done. We're going to start killing off probes from the high ground base as well, and ShoWTimE really is just completely out of control of this game, right? He doesn't have really a handle on anything. He's just about hanging in there, but you know, taking damage from every angle, and Solar just kind of choosing when to strike next, setting up spores in case of a super late game scenario, but might not even come down to that. The carrier count is growing, but he also has access to a spy if he just wants to add corruptors and really kind of get you know, the anti-carrier force up.
The good thing for ShoWTimE could be if he gets to max out. If Solar allows ShoWTimE to max out on an army, ShoWTimE might still have one more big attack to win the army, because ShoWTimE's army is going to be stronger. With the attack upgrades finishing and carapace upgrades not really in place yet for Solar, ShoWTimE's army is still very strong if it's fighting all together. But ShoWTimE is not really being allowed to fight all together. Solar is always splitting his army on one part at the top, one part at the bottom, and ShoWTimE is splitting his army as well. Right now, these couple of trades were not that great for Solar, since ShoWTimE's probe count is at 54, meaning if he gets to max out, his army is going to be huge. But Solar is already making this corruptor transition and making Spore Forest in the middle of the map. So yeah, the timing window might not be open for ShoWTimE, but I still think it's going to be his chance.
Let's see if there is something. We see Lurkers once again around that bottom left-hand side, so going to try and hit this new base that ShoWTimE's trying to get established. The carry count has grown quite a bit. So, scarier than it has been as we try to fight these lurkers. We have the detection, so these lurkers will go down pretty quickly. Now the carriers get to shut off these hydras as well, so that's some free pickings here from ShoWTimE. And it does free up some supply from Solar to spend some money if he wants to, but I mean, it's a lot of just kind of units lost for really no gain.
If you see this as a Protoss player, this is definitely the timing to at least clear the creep in the middle of the map, to not allow the Zerg to put the spores literally in the middle of the map. Right now, Solar has basically only corruptors to fight the carriers. He has and the spores, but the most important part is the Viper. He can possibly try to abduct a single carrier every time he comes in close, but the ShoWTimE is also protecting these carriers with so many High Templars that he has. This is the moment that ShoWTimE's army is stronger than Solar's, but Solar has the economy. So if he can trade like one unit every few seconds, is going to be quite decent for Solar. And he also cancels the 5th base of ShoWTimE in the middle of all this, and ShoWTimE cleared an entire creep. Oh, the Zerglings go into the natural of ShoWTimE. ShoWTimE is forced to recall parts of his army, but now oh my god, Solar is going to collapse in the middle of the map. Oh, the High Templars, the High Templars!
Yeah, this is not pretty. They're left behind, so these High Templar are going to be in a bunch of trouble. He saves a few at the prism, which is better than nothing, because he was about to lose everything there. So again, just Solar causing, causing mistakes, forcing mistakes from ShoWTimE. ShoWTimE focus on the recall, focus on defending, then loses out in the center. Again, Solar just playing that kind of nice, quick, speedy game, and just, forcing his opponent to kind of play to his rhythm is going to force ShoWTimE to make a couple mistakes. ShoWTimE still more or less maxed out, still has a good army, but again, pushing forward. This is why Solar got all of those spore crawlers set up, because now a push forward from ShoWTimE is going to be a little bit tougher to break through on the Zerg side of the map than it would be otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. And Solar also gathered a lot of resources in the meantime. He's at 3,000 and 2,000. But still, ShoWTimE's army is very scary. Since there are no Broodlords and it's only Lurkers, ShoWTimE still has a shot if it's micro properly. These Corruptors cannot go freely into the carriers. And we can see ShoWTimE basically just one A moving through the Lurkers. The Archons don't really care that much. And looks like ShoWTimE is pushing through. The Lurkers are almost gone, there's only Corruptors left. Solar has absolutely nothing to deal with the Archons, nothing to do with the High Templars, and possibly the constant trading of Solar and not taking up so quickly might cost him this game.
Yeah, he has one abduct as one carrier goes down, but this march to ShoWTimE, scary. The rebuild from Solar is just Ling, Hydra, and a few Banes as well, but that's not the most ideal situation, right? Like, this is not the best army to end up on. Corruptors trying to stay alive until they see some reinforcements, perhaps another abduct. Anything like that does help just to whittle down what ShoWTimE has. Big counterattack as well. Obviously, ShoWTimE is losing a Nexus and just all sorts at home. He's even going to warp Zealots in at home. And drop a few more Storms here, trying to soften up the ground army. There's not much left. The carriers are not going to have enough, I don't think, against these Corruptors. They're going to try and take out the few Hydras. If you can take out the ground army, then your own ground army can still survive. That could be kind of interesting, because Solar is not set up to build Broodlords or anything off these Corruptors, so they are very much so dead weight all of a sudden. And that supply means absolutely nothing, as they're currently getting Archon to death.
It's 100 supply versus 100 supply. Solar can barely make even a couple of Zerglings. His economy is quite bad. 37 drones to 44 pros. A lot of the expansions are basically dry, but ShoWTimE is not very mining happily as well. But his bases are fresher. The third base, it got destroyed a long time ago. It has a little bit more minerals. It's just more fresh. The fourth base in the meantime is going to be puked on by the Corruptors, while ShoWTimE is still pushing forward. With a lot of Zealots, lots of Archons, it's very hard for the Zerg to deal with the reinforcement. When you don't have like the overwhelming number of units, it's much tougher for the Zerg to clear the Protoss army.
ShoWTime's just cancelled the Lurkers twice as well, so a set of 3 and then a set of 4 both got cancelled, so now a single Lurker pops out, which maybe would have done it because ShoWTimE doesn't actually have detection on the map, so Lurkers would have been huge. ShoWTimE is going to get the win in the end, though. With this attack, he is able to get through. And Solar has to...
I just have to play it in the best of 3 pretty much 100% of the time. Yeah. Unless Zerg just veto it for the sake of, hey, this is a 50-50 map, and I much rather just veto a 50-50 map and get like Dragon Scales for the Zerg, which I think is more beneficial for the Zerg. But Solar vetoed Dragon Scales, so that left me wondering why would he possibly do that. That was quite intriguing.
Okay. All right, well, in the bottom left, Red Protoss play here is ShoWTimE up 1-0 after that. Pretty awesome game number 1.
And on the other side of the map, controlling the entire game up until the very late game, it's Solar. And ShoWTimE is also very good at just controlling the late game armies, the carriers, the Archons, the Immortals, and the High Templars. ShoWTimE didn't even give Solar the opportunity to abduct the one carrier at a time when he was attacking. Once all the interceptors are out and your Archons are like on top of Lurkers, most of the time this fight is already going well for Protoss. And ShoWTimE just realized his position very well in that position and kept pushing forward. He even won the fight without casting, I think, a single Storm there. There were basically like no ground units for Solar, while ShoWTimE still had like 4 Immortals, 6 to 8 Archons, 6 High Templars, and Solar was only working with like a couple of Lurkers, lots of Zerglings on the counterattack, and pure Corruptor Viper. That was simply not enough to deal with that massive army of Protoss.
Yeah, it's really like the Corruptors... They just get left in the sky, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you have like 20 supply, 25 supply Corruptors, and they just don't do anything. They could go caustic spray down a base, sure, right? But like, when it comes to actually saving the army and fighting on the ground, they just don't do anything. So, kind of, it was kind of cool because obviously there's a moment where ShoWTimE just decided, right, boom, target fire the ground units because, ignore the Corruptors, they're not going to matter any longer. So recognizing that as a bit of a win condition as well.
Yeah, what also the Corruptors can do is like shut down the War Prism, so there's like no more reinforcements during the fight for the Protoss, but Zerg has to have enough economy and enough money to like reinforce with a second wave of the Swarm. And Solar already did that, he already like started the reinforcements with the Hydralisk Zerglings and a couple of Banelings, and so like his economy was completely dry at that moment. So yeah, the Corruptors felt very, very useless at that point, even though he's tried to snipe bases. But yeah, we're working on Ancient Cistern this time. I think we're going to be seeing pretty much similar style from ShoWTimE. I wonder if he's going to go for the Storm again instead of the Disruptors. I always seen him going for Disruptors like 99% of the time, or at least in the games that I was spectating of him. And I wonder if this is going to be the case here, because I feel like on Gresvan, the late game is a little bit better because it's like a larger map, so you can get these bases, but it's also quite open. On this map, I think the Disruptors are not necessary. I like going Storm here myself, because there are like choke points going into the expansion, so like Storm is more effective. So yeah, I'm just wondering if ShoWTimE is going to be going for Disruptors or Storms, and what is the thought process of him because of that.
Yeah, no, that's... I'm with you, like, in terms of like what he usually does, which is like the fast Disruptors, keeps you very safe against some of them aggressive attacks of Zerg. It just feels as though sometimes those Disruptors are a bit more reliable than the Storms, especially when they're Roach focused, right? Because the Disruptors can get kills, whereas Storms... Yep. Kind of just tickle them. It's like, oh, cool, you stormed me, I'm still going to charge in and kill your base. So, yeah, no, it's all an intriguing question as to what he wants to do. A couple of Adepts, grab a Zergling. That comes around this left-hand side, and obviously for the moment, again, we just set up into the Oracles, waiting for those. Do you think he goes for Oracles again? Is there a reason you go for Oracles versus 3? Is it just the way the Zerg is setting up?
I think it's the way that ShoWTimE likes to play. He goes for 4 Oracles because he doesn't go for Twilight Council early on, so he doesn't use a lot of gas on anything. So he goes for a Robotics Facility and then 4, so he gets like upgrades, Observer and so on. And then you can split the Oracles 2 by 2 and then harass the Zerg, to one-shot drones. And you also get more energy to Stasis Wards, which basically means that if you go for like 4 Oracles, you can... either go for like mass blink stalkers and then do a lot of stasis wards and so on, or you can use them defensively as well and then take up quickly. So I think it just works well for ShoWTimE because he tends to go for the later stages of the game.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Obviously, especially with the later Twilight Council, you just have time to get the next Oracle out. It does you good. Obviously, Oracle's not a bad thing to have. They're pretty sick against a lot of initial Zerg aggression and keeping map control.
Very much so.
Yeah, definitely never a bad thing to have Oracles around, as we do see. A couple of them going to lead these Adepts and into an attack on the other side, so at least going to threaten the initial mineral line here. There are Queens, there are Lings. There shouldn't be an opportunity. I think Solar has plenty, and they're in. His units are in the right position as well. Most importantly, to be able to defend over there.
It's a cancel on the 4th base of Solar. Nicely done by ShoWTimE, gathering all his Oracles with a lot of energy. And again, ShoWTimE is going for 4th and the Robotics Facility, similar to the previous game. Oh, he might get a Queen, but that's quite greedy. Okay, luckily, no Oracle went down. Also, no Queen went down. Just a Transfuse used and a lot of energy. So, trading some HP for energy. That's definitely not the trade that ShoWTimE was looking for. You want to keep these Oracles on as high energy as possible. Some Adepts are shading into the 3rd base, but not finding any damage. Well, this one Adept could get some drones if it was target firing, but not quite. And I think ShoWTimE has an opportunity to cancel the 4th base again, but looks like he wants to go with these 4 Oracles to the main base, possibly even sacrifice one of his Oracles, but only target fire the drones. Let's see if he does that.
Here we go. You're going to put the most hurt Oracle in the back. He actually goes for a Queen initially. He's going to sacrifice apparently because he doesn't stop and turn around. Now he gets 2 Queens. He will start on the drones. This way you obviously do not want to lose too many more Oracles because 3 is still a pretty solid number. So 3 drones, 2 Queens though. A little bit of disruption to the injects and so on for Solar.
Yeah, I think both of the parties don't really mind the trade there. 3 Oracles is still the number that you want to keep. If it was only 2 Oracles left, it would have been so much worse for ShoWTimE. And yeah, ShoWTimE this time is going for the Robotics base, so going for the Disruptors or the Twilight Council finishing off. We're probably going to be seeing the Templar Archive soon. And this time Solar is going for a great counter to what ShoWTimE likes to do. And Solar is going for the Spire and joining up behind this. ShoWTimE's build, I think, is weak versus the Spire play because it lacks the pressure on the Zerg. It's great defensively, and like you can defend any kind of Roach Bane attacks, get your 4th base quite quickly, but you don't have the mobility of your army. But that's why ShoWTimE does the 2 sentries in his build to scout for the potential Spire, and he sends the Phoenixes hallucinated around the map to see if he has if he is facing the Spire. Where's the Spire even?
It's in the back
Did
of
he
the
see
main.
it?
Yeah, he just saw it.
He saw, okay, with the revelation. So that's good information for Podas. But okay, now you're ShoWTimE. You see the Spire. you still have to respect it. You cannot ignore it. Solar doesn't have to make any mutas, but ShoWTimE has to make some phoenixes because the mutas can come at any point now.
Yeah, so now this is maybe where Solar just doesn't make the mutas, and then he can maybe try and overwhelm on the ground with a bunch of deadweight Phoenix. Actually gets a little bit of a catch on this forward army again, as we do have a couple force fields coming down to help protect. This time, Solar doesn't clean it up like he did last game. And ShoWTimE will get there to protect himself and his fourth base. First Phoenix popping out, he is continuing to pump out Disruptors and getting that Dark Shrine online as well, so he has more options for harass. And we are going to go for the Mutalisk here as Solar, so this time he will make 10. And this is where Solar, now ShoWTimE would love to keep on making Phoenix.
Yeah, for sure, and he's not making more. He's kind of supply block at 125 out of 25. Solar is still keeping pressure on ShoWTimE, so he is kind of like occupied, not thinking about the Mutalisks. ShoWTimE is preparing some defenses versus the Mutalisk. Okay, he's chrono boosting out the additional Phoenix. He's making a second Stargate, so he believes that Solar is going to be making these Mutalisks because Solar is like, hey, look at me, I'm here, I'm there, I'm attacking you. Where if the Zerg would be committing to the ground army, he would not be doing this like small attacks. It would be a much larger attack. So ShoWTimE is expecting the Mutalisk, but there's no anti-air. The Disruptors are exposed. Oh my god.
Yep, that's going to be a pretty great first grab. Here come the couple of Phoenix to help start to dissuade these mutas from sticking around. The Lings on the ground, maybe not doing too much. We actually lose a Phoenix as well. Those ShoWTimE missing out on that. We've got one cannon on this left-hand side, which ain't really enough to stop the mutas in full. Although the mutas kind of dirt back and forwards, which is going to cost maybe one of them their lives. If the Phoenix can catch up. Not quite now. The Phoenix actually goes down again. ShoWTimE a little bit lax with these Phoenix, and the micro on them not quite as good as it needs to be to keep them alive, which is a real shame because obviously Phoenix are the real answer right now to just shutting down these mutas. And if the mutas are shut down, then this is just a pretty basic Zerg army that your ground force deals very well with.
But this is the timing for the Zerg player. While you're trying to prepare for the mass amounts of Mutalisks, Zerg is maxing out on +2 and speed baits, and this is a very crucial timing. However, it's also very committed for the Zerg. If he doesn't find any like economical damage here and only trades the armies, I think it's going to be good for Protoss. But how do you not take any damage here as a Protoss? There's no force fields, no even stasis wards, only one shield battery in the third base, one shield battery in the fourth. I think ShoWTimE is going to take a lot of damage here if Solar plays it right.
Well, first Disruptor shot at least was good, but these Banes are going to keep on coming. Stalkers try and get warped in. The pylon will go down. Cancel the warp in. Zealots try to be the wall, but we will see a few probes going down, and ShoWTimE's army in general is just somewhat non-existent following this. A few extra Zealots showing up, but there's roaches aplenty, and it does look as though, for the moment, ShoWTimE is just going to be in too much trouble and likely going to have to just look toward a Game 3. There's a Disruptor shot, though. Solar does actually get a pretty good split against it. Reinforcing Lings now are going to mean that his roaches are protected a bit as well, and these units of ShoWTimE are unlikely going to end up being enough. And that is indeed going to be ShoWTimE telling us GG's and say let's go to that game number 3.
Yeah, Solar MaxPax is like one of these players that doesn't get too emotional into the game. He's not like, oh my god, I'm winning, I need to push forward right now. But he's always just calm and collected, and he does his own thing, and he does it very well. So I'm always looking forward to see how MaxPax plays versus the best players in the world.
It's gonna be fun, whatever he gets, more PvZ or some PvP. As in the top left-hand side, fighting to avoid max packs and to get straight through to tomorrow's playoffs. Our blue Zerg player from Onside Gaming is Solar.
And the bottom right, the red Protoss player for Team Big trying to fight versus Solar. This is going to be ShoWTimE. This time Solar does get his natural blocked by the probe. In the previous game, actually, he did have his natural. I didn't really pay attention to the very early game of the previous game, but I know that Solar took his natural as the natural instead of the third base. I'm not sure if it was because of Solar going for the 14 hatch, which is becoming more popular now in Protoss versus Zerg, or because ShoWTimE doesn't scout. Because I know ShoWTimE also doesn't scout from time to time, goes for like gas first and gets his economy pumping without blocking the Zerg. So I just didn't pay close attention, but at least right now we see that ShoWTimE did indeed block the hatchery of the Solar, and we'll see if he's going to be going for the Stargate again, and I do believe he's going to be going for Stargate again. ShoWTimE is not one of these players who will go for Twilight Council. I think I haven't seen him going for a Twilight Council build for a long time in PvZ, but I do believe that this time he will be going for Blink.
What makes you
It's just a wild guess.
Just a wild guess?
It's simply because in game number 1, he played the Storm, right, instead of Disruptors. In game number 2, let's say he played his own standard, the Disruptors, and it didn't work. So in game 3, he kind of wants to switch it up I don't think he's going to be switching it up by going like all in, but he will go for the aggression simply because of the map, and also because Solar on this map versus MaxPax went for the Roach Queen attack, right? Very early on a low drone count. But MaxPax plays a little bit greedy with his opening. He like constantly probing up and techs up on 2 gateways. I think what ShoWTimE does is he goes up to 4 gateways, and he's like a little bit safer.
Yep.
So it might be one of the reasons why he will go for Blink. Of course, like I said, it's just a wild guess, but I would say if he goes for Blink, this would be the reasoning.
A wild guess, but with a lot of backup behind it. Very solid guess. All right, Stargate it is for the moment. And obviously, this part is the expectation. It's, 5 minutes or so where those differences, where those divergences start to happen. As our Adept makes its way around. And obviously, we'll see. Make sure that Solar does have a good defense early against the Adept. We've seen throughout this series that it's obviously very important to be able to do so. Just continuing to aim for that right now.
Also interesting that the first game was won by ShoWTimE on West server, and the second game was won by Solar on the Central server. So like the players switching the servers that the other player was favored on. So that's quite interesting. Now this time ShoWTimE is committing to the aggression with the Adepts. Nice moving in, forward shading back, and then also nice response by Solar, blocking these Adepts with an Evolution Chamber. But ShoWTimE decides to clear his shade, but also moves out with the Zerglings into the main base of ShoWTimE. So that's why there were no defenses in the natural of Solar, because Solar has Zerglings in the main base of ShoWTimE. So both players trading early game economies.
Yep, absolutely. As the Lings get in, they see the Oracle popping out, forces the initial Oracle activation as well, of course, which means that's a little bit less energy on the Oracle to harass with, maybe. And the Lings get a full scout through the base, although not much more to see once you've confirmed that Oracle is coming through. Oracle 2 stars. The Lings actually do get a catch on the Adept before it gets all the way home, which maybe just makes it a little scary to take your third base already. Maybe that slows ShoWTimE down a few seconds as Solar just goes back to droning, getting some extra queens up. We're back to kind of this setup stage of PvZ.
Yeah, very nice observation. Yeah, the more amount of energy that you have on the Oracle, the safer it is to get the third base. But because ShoWTimE lost the energy on the Oracle to clean up the links, while also losing the Adepts on the other side of the map, that makes it much more scary to take the third base. So ShoWTimE had to wait for his second Oracle to finish to get that third base. ShoWTimE couldn't know that Solar didn't make the additional links to cancel the third base, but if he did, and he tried to go for a third base, it would be a bit situation. So what ShoWTimE did was playing safe, what Solar did was also the correct response, and we move on to the next stage of the game, which should be the tech upgrades for ShoWTimE in the next few moments, and we're going to be seeing if it's going to be RoboForge or Twilight Council Forge. If it's Twilight Council Forge, it's probably going to be Blink.
Okay. Waiting for that then as our Forge starts initially. And waiting for any other tech to come along with it. The Oracle's still just diving around. We do have fourth Oracle building once again, so ShoWTimE's sticking to that part of his game. And Queen's just going to poke those Oracles away. So we are still just building a Forge.
Yes, fourth Oracle for ShoWTimE, so I think we're going to be seeing Robotics Facility instead of the Twilight Council. So ShoWTimE basically playing the same build again. He might still like differentiate between the Disruptors and the Storm follow-up, but his general idea of how to approach this game is basically the same, trying to find some damage. Oh, I like his maneuver with the Oracles, but Solar spotted it, and ShoWTimE going to the natural, might get a Queen, but no, again, plays trading the energies, and ShoWTimE is still a little bit ahead on the probes, which is quite nice, 53 probes to 48 drones, but Solar is about to finish a round of 11 drones, saturate his bases, and this time Solar's fourth base has not been cancelled, so a small victory here for Solar.
Yeah, Solar going to be able to keep that alive. The Oracle's not going to find it early enough to just latch onto and just to justify cancelling. As you have a fifth Oracle, by the way, so we're really heavy on the Oracles this time. It's a lot more Adepts too, so a little bit of this kind of Adept Oracle timing, and then going to go Robo now, the Twilight as well behind this. It's just a little bit of a different, more aggressive approach from ShoWTimE. Maybe gets a few Lings as they run through the Adepts at first, and then these Oracles with this amount of number can obviously dive Queens even, so we're going to start doing that. The first transfusion comes down, doesn't keep the Queen alive long, but a few seconds is still a few seconds. Now one Oracle dead, we're going to start targeting another. The Adepts putting work on the Lings during this. And is it enough from ShoWTimE to really justify all these losses? Because that's 4 dead Oracles. I feel like the answer to this is going to be a resounding no. 4 dead Oracles, the Adepts go down, maybe a couple drones now as they shade in the main base, but they're not going to last long either. And it really is 2 drones, a couple Queens, and everything lost from ShoWTimE.
If you want to ask the question if it was worth it or not, you just pull up the units lost tab and you can see how far behind ShoWTimE is. The only good thing behind this for ShoWTimE is that he kept his probe count up. throughout all of this, but it doesn't slow the Zerg down from getting a lot of drones now. Especially losing all these oracles right now. ShoWTimE's army is like 1 adept, 2 zealots, 2 sentries, and an oracle. So even the counter attack with just pure Zerglings is already deadly for ShoWTimE. Maybe not necessarily deadly, but like dangerous for ShoWTimE, and he has to respect this. Look at the amount of mirrors that ShoWTimE also has. Because he didn't find any damage, he didn't even trade armies very well. He basically traded his oracles and adepts for a bunch of queens. This is a pretty good pressure here for Solar, and Solar is not even committed here.
Yeah, so Solar's just got himself 73 drones, infestation pit, building back at home, attacking himself up into an even better state in this game. So yeah, get some free pressure across the map, and he's actually going to make the swarm hosts. Well, shocker.
I actually love this in this situation, since ShoWTimE lost all these oracles, and oracles are actually quite a threat for swarm hosts as well, because A, you cannot really go alone with the swarm host to, you know, launch from the, let's say, this position, the north position of the natural base of ShoWTimE to the natural base of ShoWTimE, because you need the protection of the queens, and also you don't need to worry about massive amount of stasis wards that the Locust can land on. So I like this situation for Solar. Makes him much more committed to aggression, but I think because ShoWTimE's army has been kind of like reset and slowed down, I think this is a great choice by Solar.
Alright, well, let's see if we can make it work. Lings and Roaches. Oh, Lings are going to get in the natural / main base. That's already frustrating for ShoWTimE. Now he has to worry about that. Never mind the fact Locusts are going to start dropping in from the middle of the map. So in they come, the Lings in the main, getting dealt with decently, but again, it's that distraction, it's that warping spent there that now isn't at the front. Super Battery activates immediately, but I'm going to have to pick up the sentries and try and save those. A few more Locusts dropping down, and again, just a Roach Ravager putting in some fire behind this also. And now the Roach Ravager's right on top of this location. A couple more biles. Solar has to back away, but he's maxed out versus 110 supply, and he's going to have another wave of Locusts in the next 20 seconds.
And ShoWTimE army doesn't get any better with the second wave. Like, what he gets is just a little bit more Stalkers with Blink. Sure, they can, you know, escape from the Locusts, but Solar will be able to trade his Locusts, his Roaches for money, because there's no clear way of clearing these Locusts. The Stalkers can deal somewhat okay with the batteries, but there's just not enough of them. And now here comes the second wave of Locusts with the Roach Ravager. Nice flank with, from Solar to going from both sides, so trying Solar to land on top of the Stalker, all of the sentries going down, and ShoWTimE is saving a lot of his Stalkers, and the Immortals are still alive. The Nexus still survives. This is a much more decent hold than I expected it to be. I thought the third base of ShoWTimE should at least go down there, while ShoWTimE was focusing on killing the Locusts. I think Solar could have possibly sniped the Nexus in the meantime with the Roach Ravager.
I thought that was the play, right? The Locusts dive on the Stalkers, the Stalkers have to blink back, which is away from the Nexus, then you get the kill, right? And I thought that was the value found, but didn't really work out, and now, you know, ShoWTimE survives again. He's adding on a little bit more tech to his army still. A few more Stalkers coming out, and, well, let's see, another wave of Locusts. Similar idea, going to land onto these Stalkers. Super Battery is back, though, so, well, okay, not for very long. Corrosive Battles get rid of that, but the Locusts haven't lasted very long either, and ShoWTimE is probably going to be able to chase down this Roach Ravager. An aggressive blink forward, gets one Ravager there. Can he chase any further? Now he's starting to go on creep. It's a little bit more dangerous, but ShoWTimE holding on against these Locust waves is kind of crazy.
That was very nice defense by ShoWTimE. Most importantly, he keeps his fourth base alive. If you have 4 bases as a Protest and you're fighting versus Locust, that's perfectly fine. You can trade quite nicely, because the Zerg economy is not that much higher than yours. You're at least on like somewhat even economy on 4 bases. So that was great defense by ShoWTimE. I bet he wishes he had an Observer right before he cleaned up the Locust so he could clear the creep. But right now comes the next wave of Locust. If he can defend this one clearly, he's going to be in a good spot. But there's so much Zerg here.
Yeah, it seems like there's an extra bit of Roach Ravager this time around, and the Immortals took a brunt of the damage off the Locust this time as well, so he actually loses some of his more important tech units this time, ShoWTimE. Towards the tail end, he's starting to look a little bit better once again, but now it feels like we're back to kind of almost purely Stalkers instead of what was, again, Stalkers and a good few Immortals before, so looking a little bit worse for wear. And as do have a Roach Ravager coming in, a few more shots going off. Stalkers do get chased away for just a moment. And a couple of Lings going to actually sneak into this right side base at the same time.
It's very annoying to deal with this. Like, even 6 Zerglings to the 4th base, ShoWTimE doesn't want to spend any attention outside of his 3rd base, because he needs to micro his Stalkers perfectly to deal with the Zerg army. So, just splitting his couple of units to the 4th base to defend, pulling back the probes, is already significantly decreasing the chances of defending this appropriately. The Super Battery is doing as much as possible. The entire cooldown goes off, and ShoWTimE again for the 3rd time defending with much army left. In the meantime, the 4th base pretty much untouched defended. But again, the ShoWTimE's army is basically only stalkers, and right now, Solar is not trading a lot of his army for army of ShoWTimE. It's mostly like trading Locus, couple of roaches right there, while ShoWTimE is losing Immortals, couple of probes, and like couple of stalkers. So resources lost is still in favor of Solar.
Yep, absolutely, and that's why you can kind of make this work off only 70 drones, which usually would be kind of a no-no for Zerg with other compositions. Locust drop down again, and we do see the Roach Ravage again up close and personal with this army as the Locusts lead you into the fight. You get on top of the base once more, and again the Stalkers are just pushed back so far. A little bit of a rough spot for the moment, as we do see. This time the base is still in a little bit of trouble, not going to go down just yet. The Immortal eating Corrosive Biles on the top side of this fight, it will go down. Now it actually is purely Stalkers, but a Super Battery to maybe buy a little bit of time at least, and that will be one saving grace here for ShoWTimE to survive. Maybe one more wave, but it's of course not looking pretty.
It's a very slow death right now, especially since this is the first time that ShoWTimE lost his economy at the same time as the army, so there's no recovering, and he knows that the next wave of Locust would basically destroy him, so he taps out, and Solar takes the series 2-1.